the introduction. So não falo português, but as much as I understood, you mentioned already, I'm a postdoc at Wageningen University, working on the 3DDD project, which is about drought resilience in northeast Brazil. So yeah, looking at who's here, I guess most people are, I don't need to tell you that Brazil has a large semi-arid area that is drought prone. For people here from elsewhere in the world, they might be less familiar with that, but Beleza is a bit iffy. The Wi-Fi here gets much better as more people go to the beach, and it's 9 o'clock and the sun's shining. So the first thing I want to talk about is just how relative drought experience can be. So yeah, I'm from Yorkshire, in the north of England. But my earliest drought memories, so this is the garden where I grew up. My mum took this photo yesterday, and yeah, I remember a few years when there was a drought and there was a ban on hose pipes. So that meant, yeah, the grass was bare, and when I played football, I used to take all the skin off my knees, and my dad couldn't wash his car. And they are my drought impacts. They're my drought memories. But then if you go to like a place like this in Ceará, that's a typical scene, and talk to the people there about their drought experience, their drought memories. And if they're really young, like me, they'll remember the 2012, 2017, the really bad drought where there was, the reservoirs were almost empty, there was high crop losses, there was water trucks having to bring water to communities. And the older people will remember probably drought causing mass migration to the coastal cities to the south of Brazil. And even older people might remember droughts causing famine. So yeah, how you experience drought, what are your drought impacts? It depends on who you are, where you are. And yeah, I know that we don't measure drought just based on annual rainfall total, but we do monitor drought based on rainfall anomaly, or on river flow anomaly, or on reservoir levels and anomalies in reservoir levels. Or we use vegetation condition indices from remote sensing, so things like NDVI, VCI, and then we generate drought maps, like you've got the Brazil drought monitor showing up in the corner. That's the current drought situation for Brazil. And the areas there that are shown as being severe drought, which is currently, it's the south of Brazil. Usually it would be the northeast where I am now, but at the moment it's the south that's in trouble. Where those areas show the severe droughts, we don't know if the people on the ground are having a severe experience of drought. So yeah, there could be some of the people in those dark red areas are experiencing food insecurity, water scarcity, but maybe some of the others are just having trouble washing the car and taking the skin off the knees when they play football. Yeah, we don't know. So the photos along the bottom are just some examples of drought impacts from northeast Brazil. Livestock deaths, water trucks having to provide potable water to communities, food insecurity, health, that could be physical health, mental health, and impacts on groundwater quality, groundwater availability. But those socioeconomic impacts are not represented by drought maps based on hydrometeorological and vegetation condition indices, which, true, that's not necessarily what they're trying to do. They are a drought map based on physical conditions. However, drought maps are used to trigger institutional response. And that institutional response is usually to deal with socioeconomic impacts of drought. So for example, in Brazil, when the municipality is marked as red, as in severe drought on the drought map, That triggers the military and the civil defense to send water trucks, or to plan sending water trucks, which will fill up people's cisternas. So you can see in the photo the cistern, which is a rainwater harvesting system, harvest rainfall in the wet season, but it doesn't always last throughout the dry season. And then you've got the US monitor, drought monitor up there on the right. And yeah, I had a meeting earlier this week with someone from Nebraska who's part of the drought monitor, and they told us since the US drought monitor has been linked to drought programs in the US, it's triggered $11 billion of funding for programs about livestock losses, crop losses, but also but the drought monitor says everything is fine, then yeah, we'd like to know why. Or if you suddenly start getting a certain type of drought impact, what's causing it? Is it climatic cause? Is it some other factor, some human cause? So just the photo is just an example from somewhere here in Ceará, where we were in November, where there was plenty of water, but all the fish were dead. Why? About drought impact monitoring. So I attend a lot of meetings and events with IDMP, with and it comes up a lot that people are always talking about drought impacts monitoring being a blind spot. You know, we monitor hydrology and meteorology. Why don't we monitor drought impacts in the same way? Especially now most people have a smartphone. And then we can try and identify the climatic causes of drought impacts, the human causes. We'll be aware of when drought is actually becoming a problem. And we can also understand the baseline situation. So, for example, some things here in Northeast Brazil that to me are a drought impact, to the people living here, that's just normal. That's what they live with all the time. So by monitoring, we can appreciate what are what's the baseline situation and when are there drought impacts. And how to do it? Well, we'd suggest citizen science is a good idea. If we want to understand how people are affected by drought, well, let's ask the people. And citizen science, there's no real accepted definition, but it's usually something like scientific activities done by the general public, or participated in by the general public. It could just be data collection all the way up to research design. And these photos are just some project citizen science programs that I've been involved with or set up in Ethiopia. On the left is monitoring rainfall, river stage, groundwater level, and on the right, participatory mapping. And yeah, so there on the left, that's like a regular monitoring, daily measurements, whereas on the right, it was occasional, it was only once or twice, and it was tapping into local indigenous traditional knowledge. And with drought impacts monitoring, it's a bit of a combination of the two. So you don't need to do this every day. It could be every 5 days, every week during the growing season, less often during the dry season. But rather than just quantitative regular measurements, you want to monitor people's local knowledge, their experiences, their perceptions. And yeah, this is being done already in a few places around the world. Good examples are from the US. So that's the current drought map, the current drought monitor. Yeah, things are not looking good for 2022 over in the West and the South. And on the right, there's all their drought impacts toolkits. And the two citizen science programs are CMOR, Condition Monitoring Observer Reports, and COCORAS, which I'm going to mention a bit more about. So CMOR, this is an online questionnaire. It's a really long questionnaire. That's just the results on the right. So a lot of multi-choice questions, drop-down boxes. You can add photographs. You can add more information. And when they set this up, around how long ago, 10 years ago, maybe, it was just put online in the hope people would fill it in. And not many did. It was a very, very slow start. And they tried an alternative technique in North Dakota, which is, if you look on that map where all the spots are near the Canadian border, North Dakota's up there. And it was really pushed with a agricultural extension agency. And that worked for a while. They got lots and lots of reports back, but then it tailed off. Yeah, so current research, we've actually got a master's project just starting, looking at why people submit data more frequently, why people only do it once. So I'll be able to get back to you on that in the future. Now I'll flick to Brazil. So Brazil kind of has two citizen science drought impacts monitoring programs at the moment. The one on the right, so coincidentally, these followed the same methodologies, the same two methodologies as Seymour did in the US. So the one on the right by Samaden, the Brazilian natural disasters people, was a big, long online questionnaire, and it was just put out there in 2018. I had some meetings with them, asked them if they could send me all their data from Ceará, and yeah, they said fine, no problem. They sent it, and there was none, zero. Nobody had filled this in. On the left, you've got the ground truthing for the drought monitor. So FUNSEME and the Ceará Foundation for Meteorology and Hydrology, who develop the drought map every month. There's ground truthing done by EMATESE, who are the Ceará Agricultural Extension people. So this is the same as what happened in North Dakota. And at the beginning, this much shorter questionnaire, it was originally even shorter than that. EMATESE extended it a bit. At the beginning, there was lots of data coming back, lots of reports, and then it stopped. Nothing else was received. So yeah, just the same as in the US. But yeah, please remember this slide. I'm going to come back to this questionnaire and this program later. Especially notice all the multi-choice questions and then the open question at the bottom. I'm going to come back to that. And yeah, back to the US. So there was COCORAS, which is another drought condition, drought impacts monitoring. But the difference with this one compared to Seymour, so COCORAS has existed for around, not sure, 20, 30 years of backyard meteorologists, like amateur meteorologists, submitting rainfall and snow measurements every day. And they thought, well, we have these engaged, motivated citizen scientists, let's just try to extend their participation to look at drought impacts and drought condition. And yeah, that's working well. And this is part of this master's project I talked about. We're comparing COCORAS to Seymour. Now, so citizen science, it's the challenge with citizen science is ensuring participation is mutually beneficial. I'm amazed I've just put this on one slide because I've done whole presentations just on this statement. I've written papers just on this. I've done a one-year postdoc looking at benefits of citizen science in Nepal, which is where these photos come from. And benefits to the researchers, to the scientists, to institutions are principally provision of data where you and when you can't usually get data, or types of data which isn't usually available. And then there's also the public engagement aspect. There's the building of trust between science and society and authorities. And then benefits for participants can be increased knowledge, increased scientific literacy, increased social capital between citizen scientists within the community, increased political capital if they're working with local government and authorities, empowerment when people are collecting and using their own data, which can lead to improved livelihoods, improved environment. Yeah, many possible benefits, but there can also be negative impacts. It can be boring, it can be time consuming or difficult. It can decrease social capital or create conflicts if some people aren't happy about what's being done, what's being monitored. It can be disempowering if certain people or groups are excluded, which could be due to being illiterate or not having a smartphone or internet. So yeah, it's really important and quite a challenge to make sure citizen science is mutually beneficial. Well, one, because it's ethical to do that, and secondly, just to maintain enthusiasm and to maintain motivation and to retain your citizen scientists. So not three options, because we're doing all of them. So three like pathways to citizen science drought impacts monitoring in Northeast Brazil. So I'm going to say something about each of these. First one, leveraging the existing FUNSAME citizen science rainfall monitoring, co-designing with participants the drought impacts and rural resilience monitoring program, and enhancing the existing FUNSAME Imatese drought monitor ground truthing, the one I talked about before. So already FUNSAME in Ceará has around 500 citizen scientists who measure rainfall every day in proper WMO rain gauges. And then they call the call center in the FUNSAME office here in Ceará every morning, and they give a rainfall measurement. But that's not all they give. So I've been talking a lot to the call center here and other people involved in this program at FUNSAME. And it's not just a person calls and says, I'm at this location and there's been 1.3 millimeters of rainfall. It's a conversation. It's, how are you? How are your family? They've been doing this for 20, 30 years. So there's a relationship with the call center operators. It's, how is your farm? Well, the maize is not doing very well because it hasn't been raining, but the cows are fat and the cisterna is full. So they're already providing drought impact information, alleviating factors of drought, aggravating factors. So let's start writing it down. So this is not going to be a questionnaire. This is just going to be conversational, but with some prompts. And the stage we're at the moment, as the call center are collectively identifying the most talkative, conversational of the citizen scientists. And also we're trying to get a distribution around the state and a distribution of livelihoods, not just farmers, some people who live in some urban people as well. And yeah, that's underway. That's started now. Now, one way of ensuring that citizen science is mutually beneficial is when you design it together with the participants. So they can tell you what data is useful to them, what do they want to monitor, what would increase their resilience. And yeah, this is the aspect that I can tell you the least about at the moment, because it's still very much in the planning stage. But the idea is to have a higher density monitoring of drought impacts, but also just farmer rural resilience. So co-designed through participatory research, maybe serious games, and yeah, design with the participants. So this is part of the Satois project, which is between FUNSAME and CIRAD, just focused on, at the moment, on 3 municipalities in Ceará. But yeah, I can't tell you much more about that at the moment. Now, this is what I mentioned earlier, and I said I'd come back to. So the existing FUNSAME Imatese drought monitor ground truthing. So remember that last question, that it was all multi-choice questions about the drought map. So is it drier or wetter than last month? A few different options. Is the rainfall everywhere in the municipality or just localized? And a few options. But at the bottom, there's this open question. Have there been any other drought impacts? Any other observations of yeah, please write down anything else interesting that you think would be useful. And yeah, I received, and FUNSAME received only, I think it was 5 months of data from the beginning of this program. So this is just a snapshot of a bit of it. And those months, we didn't have all the municipalities, they weren't consecutive months. But still, the answers to this question 5 were a goldmine of information about what drought impacts are being experienced around the state, around Ceará. And yeah, I went through all of these answers, so translated them and then coded the different impacts that emerged. And yeah, I identified like 23 different impacts, although some of these, the top 4 there are when there's plenty of rain or too much rain. But the drought impacts were things you'd expect, like reduced urban water supply, not enough water for animals, a lack of water trucks, even wildfires. And in addition to the drought impacts, some of the observers were really good, and they provided us with alleviating factors for drought. So human factors, like water levels were low, but there was someone who had a lot of water and they were providing it to the community. Or also aggravating factors, like when housing had been extended into an area that had no water. So yeah, it was unfortunate that we only had these 6 months of data and it hadn't carried on. But then we found out, so Funsame and I found out only last week or the week before, that actually this data had been collected ever since the beginning of 2019, but it just hadn't been provided to Funsame. So yeah, there's stacks and stacks of this data. Yeah, it's not complete. There's 184 municipalities in Ceará, and we never get anywhere near that many. But there's still data every month. It's not the same municipalities that don't provide information. So yeah, I need to go back through all of this extra data, and then I can really appreciate, yeah, what are the impacts all over the state? How do they vary? When are they happening? Yeah, it is a really amazing and quite a rare data set. And then the second job, so we can compare the maps of the drought severity. So this is drought severity according to the observers' data, so the socioeconomic impacts. And we could compare that to the drought map. So the drought map, the drought monitor. And what will be most interesting is if you get areas where the drought monitor says it's severe, according to rainfall and remote sensing indicators, but that's not what people are telling us on the ground. And yeah, if they don't match, then why not? There's clearly something else happening that's affecting vulnerability and resilience. So what is that? So understanding what those factors are is really important. So it could be meteorological factors. Veranicos are kind of like flash droughts. It's specific to Northeast Brazil. It's a short duration dry spell, could just be 4 or 5 days. And if that happens in the critical part of the growing season, it can have a big impact on crops. And yeah, according to farmers and yeah, agricultural agencies we've spoken to, yeah, they all tell us that veranicos are critical, and they might not show up on the drought monitor because it's the too short duration. But then there's also the physical factors. So we could compare these maps to physical factors, so things which we can't do anything about, such as the hydrogeology. It's mostly crystalline geology here. There's not a lot of groundwater, but there are some fractured aquifers, alluvial aquifers. So maybe hydrogeology is a factor in vulnerability. Maybe it's soil type and soil depth. Soils are notoriously poor and thin in Ceará. Yeah, maybe that's the critical factor explaining vulnerability. Or maybe it's land cover. It could be degradation or the extent of natural vegetation versus agricultural area. Or maybe it's the water sources are the key explanatory variable. Maybe it's, if we compare these maps to the density of wells and boreholes, or the density of reservoirs. So this is quite an out-of-date reservoir density map. This was updated recently with higher resolution satellite imagery. And yeah, there's over 100,000 small reservoirs just in Ceará state. So perhaps reservoir density is a factor explaining vulnerability or resilience. Or maybe it's density of cisternas that provide water for houses. I'm not sure if that data set is actually available. Or it could be socioeconomic factors, household size, livelihood, human development index. This data should be available from the Brazilian statistics people, IBGE. It should be available at municipality level. I haven't tried to get it yet. It could be agricultural factors. We hear a lot that land tenure is critical. So how vulnerable farmers are, you can, correlates very well to whether they own the land or whether they rent the land or neither, if they're essentially like squatting on the land. Or it could be due to the irrigated area, the agricultural variability, if people just have rain-fed crops or they also have livestock. Or adaptive capacity. How, I don't know if this will be possible to like reduce to one quantitative score per municipality. I have some problems with doing that, but adaptive capacity is such a critical factor in vulnerability and resilience that I've got to consider it somehow. So the Satois project are doing a lot of work on this at community and household level. So whether I can try to extrapolate and interpolate that, I don't know, but it has to be considered whenever you talk about resilience and vulnerability. So I mentioned this third pathway is enhancing this existing program. So what I mean by that in my TSA, I've currently got 200 new staff who are undergoing 3 weeks of training at the moment. And we've been invited to go there later today, this afternoon. And my job is just to give them a presentation and really enforce this question 5 and just say, please just give us as much information as you can about any drought impacts anywhere in the municipality. It is usually a team who provide the information for each municipality, and they do travel all around the municipality. Farmers come to them. So it is like a spatial and temporal, not really average, but a consideration for the whole month and the whole municipality. So I just want to tell them how important and how useful filling in this question 5 would be. So in summary, what we want to do in establishing citizen science drought impacts monitoring, we want to know what are the impacts. Because at the moment we just know anecdotally, but let's try and monitor these impacts. And then we can understand how they vary in space and in time, and appreciate the heterogeneities. And then this additional analysis with the data we've got, we can try to identify the causes or the factors of vulnerability or resilience, which lead to some areas suffering more from droughts or suffering less. And then, ultimately, we can just try to figure out, well, what can we actually do about it? I'd appreciate any suggestions. All these things are at quite an early stage, so it's a good time to get any feedback from anyone. And thank you very much for listening. Oh, and finally, happy birthday, Eduardo, again.
Thank you, Dave. Very nice presentation. Could you, that I would like to see. I will open the channel for the discussion question. Please, guys, feel free to make questions, suggestions to Dave. Really, we are in the early stage of the work, so it would be nice to have your views, perspectives on what Davis and Warning and Fonsemi are trying to do. Giselle, any comments?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to digest all the information I got now. So I think it's a very interesting project. And how long are you supposed to work on this project? Sorry for asking that, but it's like how many months or years you're thinking about working on that?
No, it's more. The project recently got an extension until the end of 2023. So
okay.
There's three PhD students, Luisi, Sarah, Germano, who are going to be working on it until the end of 2023. At the moment, my contract doesn't go that far, but we're working on it to try to get it extended that long. But then we're working together with Funseme and Sirad on the Satois project, and yeah, that is going that extends much longer. So the aspect of the project I talked about, the co-design of the participatory monitoring with the farmers, there's more time to establish that. So it's years rather than months.
Okay. There are a lot of questions there, so I'd like to get more close to the project itself and see what is supposed to happen in the next few months, and see if me and my students could somehow participate on that and in small parts of the project, or even discuss the methodology, things like that. Yeah,
definitely. Especially if you've got some good statistics or machine learning people, perhaps, because I'm a bit uncertain.
We have some statistical background. We have a professor in our department called Carlos Lima. He is an expert in machine learning, and it might be very helpful in trying to understand the factors that affect vulnerability in Brazilians and how that relates to the lack of water sometimes. Because people in the Northeast, not Northeast, I think generally in Brazil, people think about drought and about the water, but there are much more. We worsen the problem very much. So there are a lot of factors that is responsible for the impacts, and sometimes we can alleviate that. Sometimes politicians come up with some miracle plans that unfortunately may worsen the problem in the future. And so there are so many possibilities to work on in this issue that's why I asked before how many years you have to work on that, because there's certainly a lot of challenges, but that's it.
Yeah, there are also the perspective, right? We are not monitoring droughts only at the large scale. We are trying to reach out the communities. So it's really working indicators that reflect the local droughts, since we are getting the information from citizens in the field, right? So we have to work also what the monitor map reflects and how to relate that to the local area.
Yeah, David mentioned something that I thought was very interesting. He talked about the call center members speaking with the monitors, and Funseme is gonna train these guys to somehow ask the right questions or something like that, and how to write down the answers in a sense that it can be helpful in the future. Because I know they talk a lot with the guy, they know the person, right? I remember a lot of people, but David, I worked for Funseme for a couple of years, so I know very well how it works. But yeah, I heard a lot of stories when people talk to these guys in the field. And there's certainly a lot of very important information there that we are not getting or writing down or storing that might be helpful.
Giselle, I asked the skills here. We have a couple of questions in the chat, okay? The first one is from Camila Almeida. She congratulates you, David, and asked if you can tell a little bit more about the methodology of maps data comparison.
Yeah, well, I showed it spatially, showing the layers of the maps, but essentially it's just it's statistics. Now, there's going to be a quantitative value per municipality for the drought severity according to the questionnaires, And then there'll also be, I'll have to reduce all those other layers also to a numerical value. And it depends how many of these data sets I can actually acquire. So Funseme have a lot of these data sets already, and I have people promise to share them with me. And then if I only receive a few of these data sets, it'll just be some kind of regression. So yeah, I'm going to involve somebody who's a lot better and can talk about statistics a lot better than I can, but it'll be some kind of regression to rank the explanatory variables. But if I manage to get more and more data sets, it might have to be some sort of machine learning, like random forest type algorithm to, but I'm not sure. It depends how much data I get back, but it won't be, it's, you know, it can be done with tables of data. It's not going to be done as a, it doesn't, I've shown it as if it's going to be like a GIS comparison, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay. And we have another question here. If you can talk a little bit on how your results connect to the effort of agent-based modeling that is in the 3DD project.
Yeah, some of these things I've talked about are quite new, because like I said, it was only last week when we discovered, Juliana at Funseme and I discovered that we had this years of data. And so the agent-based modeling, that's Germano's, Germano Rivera Neto, that's his part of his PhD. And yeah, it can definitely contribute to the agent-based modeling. This data could be validation for some of the decisions and the behaviors that he programs into the model. This data could be used as validation for those behaviors if we can, and we can try to pick out of these data sets the human aggravating factors of drought alleviation or aggravation, and yeah, they can feed into the agent-based modeling as well. But yeah, I haven't had a proper conversation with Germano about this yet, because it's still it's so recently that we found out this data was available.
Okay, we have also a question by Alice. Congratulations on such an impressive and important project. I would like also to know more about the methodology used to integrate and compare maps and data. I think you already covered this, yeah. Right? Could you talk more about the strategies to co-design the monitoring program with the participants?
Yeah, so that's starting. I don't know. There's probably other people on this in this meeting who could say more about that, like Veronica or someone. But there's going to be workshops with various communities. And yeah, we're doing, we trialed participatory 3D modeling. We trialed this in November, and Sarah Kachauk, who's a PhD student on the 3DDD project, she's probably going to be doing this modeling in June. And yeah, that's when you build a model, actual 3D model, physical model, together with the communities, and just to learn about spatially people's drought experiences, their water sources, adaptive strategies, coping strategies. And it'll be through those kind of activities. And also there's Niels Verond involved in the Toys project, who's a water serious games person. And it'll be, yeah, using these kind of participatory activities that, yeah, together we'll try and, yeah, co-design some sort of monitoring program. Yeah, we want to know what data or what information. We know what's useful to us, but what's useful for the farmers, and then that's what we'll try to implement monitoring.
Okay. Yeah, I think the questions are about it. I don't know, Peter is here in the meeting as well, if he wants to say a little bit about the 3D.
Just say, Veronica has a hand up, so maybe she wants to come in about these setting up the monitoring.
Okay, Veronica, you can. Yeah.
David, thank you so much for this very, very interesting presentation. I just want to complete a bit about this idea about how we will work the co-design with the local impacts monitoring. The idea is in the articulation with CertoS project, which I'm in charge with, it will be to work at the level of 3 municipalities and to articulate this drought monitoring, participatory drought monitoring with local water management committees that we are trying to create in the CertoS project. So the idea of the co-designing, which are the important indicators, it's also a way to address the question, which are the information which are locally relevant in order to inform local structure of managing water and water scarcity in order to improve resilience, you know. So it's not also about, I think this research is very, very important, not only in terms of better understanding the drought impacts, especially at the local levels, but also what David already explained a bit, identifying resilience factors and how these resilience factors can be improved and sustained in the water management by the institutions, but also by the local actors. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, it seems I missed one question by Alice, according Conceição. Yes, Dave, Alice is asking for you to tell a little bit more about the softwares used to treat data.
Yeah, well, nothing very, very special. Everything is going to be, the data sets are being received as shape files, ideally rasters, so I can do some like municipality averaging. Yeah, and then the statistics, it depends how complicated the statistical analysis ends up being, but it'll just be on probably on Python. That's the thing I'm most familiar with. So yeah, there won't be any special software use. It'll just be QGIS and then probably Python or R.
Okay. I don't know now if Peter wants to address a few words about our 3D project. If not, if nobody else has any questions, we can close the deal. But Peter is here. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, congratulations, Eduardo, with your birthday. But I would like to say that I'm very happy to see this happening, because I think this this way of collecting data on the ground, or monitoring data, or finding out how impacts are actually taking place. I think this is a cross-cutting thing that can benefit many different initiatives, and I hope this can be something which is continuated. So I think this is a great possibility for us to start understanding how actually the drought is taking place and how it has taken place in the past. So I truly hope that we can really work together on this. And what I also heard, and I totally agree with David, that it could be beneficial also to validate, for instance, agent-based models. So we can learn from this information in multiple ways, and we can try to use it to improve tools.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. Does anyone wants to say anything else before I?
There's another hand up.
Oh, yeah?
Conceição is, yeah.
It's Conceição. Go ahead, Conceição.
Hi, thanks, Dave, for the presentation. It was great. I was just curious, last question. I don't know if the project itself in a whole, is there anyone doing the same thing you're doing in Ceará that is doing in the Netherlands? I mean, to see the difference of the perception of droughts from people in the field. Do you know if it's the same initiative all the way back in the Netherlands, or just I wanted to see any comparison, if you have any comparison of perception of droughts that you observe in Ceará compared to in the Netherlands?
Yeah, certainly not like as part of the project, but there are a few drought projects that we've just had some like informal coffee meetings about them that are starting out of our group. So Peter and I are part of the Water Resources Management Group at Wageningen University, and yeah, there's one or two maybe projects that are starting anytime now, who do have plans to do participatory activities in the Netherlands. And yeah, we've had some meetings with them, and we're going to have more meetings. And one of the reasons why is so we can share the methodologies that we're using in Ceará and apply them in the Netherlands. So I'd love to do that. It would be really interesting, just to compare, not just in the Netherlands, just to comparisons with many different places, because there's things that both areas will be able to learn from each other in terms of dealing with the drought, but then also the researchers can learn from each other as well. So yeah, hopefully, yes, that will be happening.
Nice. Thanks.
Okay. Well, we had an attendance of 44, so it's quite a significant number, considering that this channel was created a couple of days ago, right? And we managed to mobilize the network to have this kind of attendance, and an open section with Dave was really fun to watch and see the perspective of the collaboration that we have ahead of us. This is really, well, I would say a dream that I thought 2 years ago, and I was considering that, and I think that now we can conceive a management team, because this should not be an initiative of Eduardo's or Funsemis, but the network. So I really want to see Wageningen, UNB really connected, and maybe we should have a editorial board to really think about this. What are the road ahead of us, and how to mobilize the network and expand it to discuss all the topics that we have in our hands. It's not few. It's quite it's quite many things that we have to do, not only in the scope of the projects that we are coordinating, but the agenda that we are really prospecting right now. So thank you very much, Dave, for your talk. Was really nice, and I pass the word to you to give a final thoughts on what are the perspective on your view regarding the collaboration, this kind of network that we are trying to set up.
Yeah, thanks, Eduardo. And thanks for inviting me. It's quite an honor and a bit of pressure to do the first one. But no, it's good to see so many people attending, and yeah, with the questions that were being asked, I can see, yeah, we all seem to have similar interests and can learn from each other, and then also transferring what we're doing in Ceará elsewhere. Yeah, thanks, Peter, for reminding me. I mentioned the master's project in the US, looking into the citizen science there, which the findings we can then also bring to Northeast Brazil. Yes, thanks very much for attending. So I can't remember what other points you wanted me to discuss.
It's fine. It's just to give the final word to you, and then you say whatever is in your mind in terms of the prospective work that we have ahead of us. Well,
there's a lot of work. it'll be difficult, but fun. Yeah, I really enjoy working with your people in the call center and the people on the ground. And yeah, thanks a lot for always making us welcome and providing us with things when we come when we're in Fortaleza. And I'm looking forward to getting on with it.
Okay, guys. So this is the first webinar. Was the first webinar of Papo Connexus. I think Peter has to start imagining when will be a good date for him to give a talk on social hydrology or other topics that you are interested. So guys, I really appreciate all the effort to be a part of this and having fun with you guys. Discussing these topics are really what motivates me right now in the, say Giselle, go ahead.
Just one thing before you finish, I would kindly ask people who participate in this talk that make comments in the Instagram accounts, so it might help us getting more people to come to the next seminars.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And also we are organizing a YouTube channel to upload all the talks. All talks will be recorded. I think we are gonna have mirrors in 3D project as well in the blog, right, Dave?
Yeah.
And also we are organizing email accounts for us to take out suggestions on next talks from you guys. So it'd be nice for you really to be connected to this network. So I would like to point out my last point, I promise. This is something that we are trying to set up. So there's still some hiccups, if you will, right? We are learning with the process. I'm not good at this media thing. I'm trying to learn. And I will count with you guys on suggestions on how to improve the channel and the connection with you. This is very important to us, okay? Okay, guys, was nice to have you here.